Thank you, folks. And now we're going to beat up one.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Rick Fedrizzi, CEO and founding chairman of the U.S. Green Building Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, this is exciting. I jumped into this spot today to introduce someone really special, and it's not the person you're thinking about. I'm going to let him introduce that person who's really special. But I wanted to come here and introduce the person that's going to make that introduction because I think that there is some amazing synergy between what's happening in the world of health and wellness and what happened many years ago at the U.S. Green Building Council and the world of sustainability related to buildings. The gentleman who I'm going to have come up here is a gentleman named Paul Scialla, who I was fortunate enough to meet about 2 years ago. And we started talking in general terms about what he and his brother Pete and their small organization wanted to do relative to changing the way that the built environment thought about health and wellness. And I was intrigued. My first, response was a little bit territorial. Well, LEED cares about health, and it's, yes, we do. But in our two rating systems, when we look at them today, LEED covers about 30% of the same territory. There's another 70% that is right now untouched by LEED. And maybe should never be touched by LEED because as it enters the laser focus of the human being, there's a whole different discussion that takes place. I think humans need a little bit more focus on themselves and not necessarily the bricks, the mortar, the air quality, the lighting, the materials. That is a part of the whole. But there is also this moment where we go into a part of our physiology and our mental state. Why I wonder why I am, during Greenbuild, delivered at least 3 quad shot lattes a day. It kind of keeps me alive and going. I just basically said to Dr. Chopra, please do not get mad at me if one of my assistants brings me a latte during this thing, because I'm figuring coffee must be bad. And he terrifically told me coffee is really good for you. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but I was very, very thrilled by that. But anyway, what I love about Paul Scialla and his brother Pete is they have been very successful executives at Goldman Sachs. They've done very well. What I also love is that it kind of has a little bit of a parallel connection between my background. I feel I did a very good job for my previous employer, United Technologies, where I was for 25 years. But I remember distinctly a moment where, and I think I said this to my wife, Kathy, who's sitting in the front row right here. I think I said, I just don't want my headstone someday to read, Rick Fedrizzi, a great guy, had a company car and stock options. I wanted it to mean more. I wanted it to have more of a purpose. And so serendipity, I met the right person, David Gottfried, at exactly the right time in history where my need and his opportunity kind of coalesced into some amazing, amazing place. And every day of my life, I'll be grateful for that because it gave me the chance to combine my heart and my brain with a plan that was bigger than me and bigger than anything I could single-handedly ever accomplish, that I'd get to meet so many amazing, committed people, and I could be a part of something that was big and transformative. And that's what I got from Paul and from Pete in that very first conversation. And when I look forward and I see that the people that they've brought around them, the connections that they've made, I am truly astounded by what they've been able to accomplish in a very short period of time. And their ability to bring Dr. Chopra here today speaks volumes to me as to where their values are and what we're trying to accomplish. So with that, I'd like to bring out my friend, Paul Scialla, to tell you a little bit about the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here this afternoon. Rick, sir, thank you for your continued guidance, friendship. As Rick mentioned, we did have a conversation about 2 years ago at this point about a body of work that we were assembling, really looking to continue to help push the envelope in addressing the human condition in our spaces, these spaces that we're spending 92% of our time indoors. We were not built this way. We were not built to be inside, and we felt we wanted to contribute as much as possible to marry doctors with architects, looking to assemble thought leadership across as many disciplines as possible, medicine, science, architecture, design, technology, sustainability, to create as robust a body of work as we could to help tackle this issue and continue to build on the great framework and foundation of LEED in terms of the daylighting and materials input and air exchange, and really felt we can contribute to help push this further. That body of work is known as the Well Building Standard, which we did release on Monday here, the week of Greenbuild. No better venue to do so. And we have formed an amazing partnership with GBCI. The Green Building Certification Institute, the way I feel about that mechanism, that infrastructure, is it's an enabling force. It's got this power to take a certain intention, like LEED for the last decade plus, and scale it globally and influence behavioral change and our ability now to be so fortunate to have such a best-in-class third-party auditing and certifying engine like GBCI perform the same function for well and help scale this intention, I think just speaks volume of what Rick and Mahesh and the teams have built. And again, thank you guys. I have the great pleasure of introducing a friend of mine and a co-collaborator, Dr. Deepak Chopra. Deepak is the author of more than 80 books. I don't know how he does it. I think will be his third this year, I believe, The Future of God, which will be released on November 11th. 43 languages his books have been translated into. He's got 22 New York Times bestsellers. Deepak is the founder of the Chopra Foundation, co-founder and chairman of the board of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing, founder of the Chopra Well on YouTube. He holds multiple academic positions, and he also sits on the board of Delos. Time magazine described Dr. Chopra as one of the 100 heroes and icons of the century and credits him as the poet, prophet of alternative medicine. I've had the fortune of working alongside Deepak for the best part of 5 years now, and very much look forward to introducing him to this audience here today. Enjoy, guys. Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rick, for having me here. Rick, thank you. Thank you for being here. So I have 60 minutes. By the way, the timer is not right. So can you start counting backwards from 60 minutes? It says 34. So I have 60 minutes to cover a lot of material and solve the problem of our existence and the nature of the universe. So I'm going to do my best to cover everything in the next 60 minutes. But if things go well, then, and if you want, I can do a 10-minute meditation in the end, which will put it all together. Oh, good. Good. So a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, exactly, I wrote a book called God, A Story of Revelation. The next book is called The Future of God. So you can see I have an obsession with God. But that book was about the way human beings have thought about the mystery of their existence for the last several thousand years. So that book started with the story of Job in the Old Testament. and then the story of St. Paul on the road to Damascus, and then it moved on to some other Christian saints, and then Rumi, the Sufi poet, and Adi Shankara, the great teacher of Vedanta, and on, right to the conclusion, which was a conversation between Einstein and the great Indian poet Tagore. So everyone knows who Einstein is, but lots of people don't know who Tagore was. He was an Indian poet who had also won the Nobel Prize around that time. So he was traveling across the world, and Einstein had invited him to meet him in Berlin. This was before the Second World War, before the Nazis, took over, and although the zeitgeist was moving in that direction. And it's a very interesting conversation, which was reported in the New York Times. And that was the inspiration for writing the book, because Einstein and Tagore represented two different worldviews, one of science and the other of spirituality. And it's a very interesting conversation, as I said, in the New York Times, reported in the year 1930. And it begins with Einstein quoting Tagore's poetry as he enters his house. And Tagore responds by saying, "Herr Einstein, Dr. Einstein, I would quote you, except it would all be numbers." So that's the beginning of the conversation. Is the universe the way we see it, or is the universe something else that appears the way we see it? So I was writing about this book, and I was traveling across the country, and I arrived in Los Angeles, where my son, Gautam, picked me up with my then 5-year-old grandson, Krishan. Krishan's mother is Chinese, so we call him a Chindian, and he's 2/3 of the human race, so we also refer to him as the master race. So anyway, as we got out of the airport, my grandson, 5 years, he says, "Dada," which is the Indian word for grandfather. He says, "What is dark energy?" It's an odd question coming from a 5-year-old. So I said, "What do you know about dark energy?" And he said, "Well, it's 70% of the universe." I don't know how many of you know that. And I said, "What else do you know about it?" He said, "It flows through the night sky." Beautiful way of describing dark energy. So we get out of the airport. We're going by the ocean, Santa Monica. I roll down the window. It's a beautiful day. You can actually smell the ocean and gorgeous sunshine. And he looks at me and he says, "How did they make the ocean?" So I said, who make the ocean? He said, "They." I said, "No, that's not scientific. You have to be precise. What do you mean by they?" So he thinks for a few seconds and he reframes the question. He said, "How did the ocean get made?" So I said, it got made the same way as the earth got made. We're a piece of rock with some water, and we fell off a giant star, which now there's several of those rocks, and that's the solar system. Then I turned to him and I said, "Do you know how many planets there are in the solar system?" He said, "Well, if you count Pluto, there are 9. But a lot of people don't think Pluto is a real planet, so then there would be 8. So now I'm getting really intrigued by this little kid, I said, "Where did the solar system come from?" He said, "From the galaxy." I said, "Yeah, what's the name of the galaxy?" He said, "The Milky Way." I said, "Yeah, that's right. Where did that come from?" He said, "From the universe." I said, "That's true." Where did the universe come from? And without batting an eyelid, he said, "From another dimension." So, this is 30 years of what I've been doing. And this little kid, in 3 minutes, he summarizes everything. So, I'm Indian, and in India, we think everything recycles. We call it reincarnation. So I'm thinking Galileo. Isaac Newton, Einstein. I said, how do you know all this? And he said, it's on my Pokemon. So the reason I tell you this story is that two reasons, actually. First of all, if you don't know what's happening on Pokemon, you don't know what's happening in the world. Okay? You're not a part of the zeitgeist. Because these little 5-year-olds can get more information from their video games than we can get from Google or Wikipedia or going to a library or even from an academic institution. Just not Pokemon, but all the video stuff that's coming out right now. But the second reason I'm sharing this story with you is if you look at science today and you go to Science magazine or any other scientific literature and you ask two questions. What are the two most important questions, unsolved questions in science? The first unsolved mystery in science is what is the stuff of the universe? What is it made of? And the reason we don't know, or why it's unsolved, is that precisely what my grandson said, 70% is dark energy, which is moving the space between galaxies faster than the speed of light. So right now, as we are sitting here on planet Earth in this location, LEED certified, I hope, and soon to be well certified, the distance between our galaxy, the Milky Way, and the next door galaxy, Andromeda, and the one next door, Virgo, etc., it's moving faster than the speed of light due to this energy, and we have no idea what it is. Einstein described it, actually, as the cosmological constant. So that's 70% of the universe, invisible. Of the remaining 30%, 25% is another mysterious entity called dark matter. And dark matter is invisible. So we can't see it. And the reason it's invisible, it's not made up of atoms. So everything we know is made up of atoms. Your body is made up of atoms. In fact, the atoms in your body were manufactured in stars. You are a stardust being that has consciousness or awareness. But only 5% of the universe is made up of atoms. The rest, the other part of the universe, dark matter, is not atomic, so there's no way of interacting with it. Why do we call it matter? The reason we call it matter is that it bends space-time in the same way as regular matter, and so it's responsible for most of the gravity in a galaxy, and therefore in the solar system. And therefore, right now, it is this mysterious force, which is totally invisible, that is holding your body together. Because if it wasn't for gravity, our bodies would fall apart. So would our galaxy. So would our solar system. So now we're left with 5% of the universe, which is atomic, and of that 5%, 99.9999% is invisible interstellar dust, which has not yet formed into stars. The visible universe, which is hundreds of billions of galaxies with trillions of stars and trillions and trillions and trillions of planetary systems, is 0.01% of what's there. The rest is unknown or unknowable. Why unknowable? How do you interact with something that's not even atomic? How do you even frame a question of how do you find it? 0.01% is the visible universe. But here's the problem with the visible universe. It's made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of particles, subatomic particles. And if you leave subatomic particles alone, which means you're not looking at them, or they're not interacting with other particles, they disappear. They disappear into waves. It's called the wave-particle duality. The particles are also waves. And unlike particles, which are things that you can see, measure, waves are invisible. So what's the universe made of? Nothing. That's why it's an open question. That's why it's an unsolvable question. This huge expanse of universe comes out of nothing. Another dimension, as my grandson said. The second mystery in science is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? How does our brain produce thoughts, emotions, feelings, desires, imagination, or even perception? Right now you're looking at me. It's because you're a conscious being and you're having an experience. And the reason we don't know the answer to that is that it's impossible to come up with a model of how atoms and molecules in a brain produce thought or imagination or perception. When you look at those colors there, you know, those red colors, there's no red coming into your eyes. It's invisible photons that are totally dimensionless. And in fact, for the photons, from the photons reference frame, it takes no time for those photons to come to your eyes. And they create an electrical impulse that goes to your brain. And in the brain, there's some chemistry. But you see a three-dimensional world in space and time. How? No answer. So there's no answer to what's the stuff of the universe. It's non-stuff. And there's no answer to how do we experience this non-stuff as stuff. Which leads me to what is the nature of reality, basically. And the answer is, we really don't know. This is the 2 questions posed in Science magazine, 2005, and they haven't changed since then. What is the universe made of? What is the biological basis of consciousness? And this is a summary of everything my grandson knows. Okay. Dark energy, dark matter, invisible atoms, hydrogen and helium, the entire visible universe, 0.01. And if we were to make it simpler, because I asked the guy who described dark matter in the universe, he was there at our conference, Sages and Scientists, Paul, and his name is Joel Premack. He said, imagine a big chocolate cake, and most of the chocolate is dark energy. The frosting is dark matter. The visible hydrogen and helium is the whipped cream. And the tiniest little bit of cinnamon at the top is the entire visible universe. And we would not know that if we didn't have intelligence, if we didn't have consciousness, if we weren't conscious beings. So he drew the cherry, not to scale. Okay? Because it's, how do you scale consciousness? Okay. So if you look at all the great wisdom traditions of the world, which I have been doing for the last 30 years, without the help of Pokemon, they say that our total reality is consciousness and its contents. The universe is consciousness and its contents, which we experience as sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. So a well-certified building would maximize the experience of what are the sensations we experience through our 5 senses, what are the images that surround us, biophilia and everything else, what are the feelings and thoughts they arouse. Because this is our reality. Our reality is not photons. Our reality is not molecules. Our reality is not atoms. Our reality is the sensations we experience, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. It's the images that surround us and the images we evoke in our own consciousness. It's our emotions and feelings, and it's our thoughts. And that's what I want to do the meditation on as we conclude this morning's lecture. So we call this the top-down solution to the hard problem The heart problem, as it's called in science, is we do not know how we experience anything, mental or physical experience. We do not know how atoms and molecules build up to a brain producing consciousness. And therefore, we are suggesting, along with other people who work in the field of consciousness, that you start with consciousness and then you come down from there. Instead of a bottoms-up approach, how do atoms produce consciousness, you start the other way around. And we have looked at the science of this, and in fact, I will skip some of the theoretical considerations here, but you know, we experience a spiritual world when we transcend, we experience a mental world when we have thoughts and we have imagination, we experience a physical world as our body and the universe. And so we said, how can we even begin to do studies that validate this idea? And so recently at our center, in collaboration with other institutions, including Harvard Medical School, scientists at Harvard Medical School, Scripps, Mount Sinai, the Blackburn Lab. Elizabeth Blackburn is the Nobel laureate who won the Nobel Prize in the year 2011 for discovering the enzyme that controls our aging at a molecular level. The enzyme is called telomerase. And the Scripps Translational Science Institute, which has the best digital technology that you can imagine for looking at human biology, we started to study participants who came to our center to practice meditation for a week. The course is called Seduction of Spirit. And these were the collaborators, and these are the things they were studying: the gene, human genome, Alzheimer's related genes, inflammation markers, the microbiome. The microbiome is 90% of the DNA in your body is not human, it's bacteria. So in fact, you're a few human cells hanging on to a bacterial colony. And all of science until recently has been only about the human cells, not about the bacteria in your body, which are everywhere, in your skin, in your gut, in your mouth, in your intestines, etc. And this part of us, which is 3% of our body mass, but 90% of our DNA, this part of us actually makes the molecules that crosstalk with human DNA to keep you alive. Now, you know, I'm giving you a lot of information because I want you to have a sense of wonder about the mystery of your own being. You're being held together right now by dark energy, dark matter, the electromagnetic fields of the universe, subatomic forces, the microbiome, and everything you experience as sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. If that's not enough to evoke a huge sense of humility and reverence for existence, and a sense of wonder, and a sense of excitement, then our humanity is not complete. If we do not have that spiritual experience, just as the mystery of our own existence, our humanity is not complete. And as I said, we started to look at all of this, including digital ways of measuring sleep, breathing, heart rate, brain waves, etc. This is all measurable, by the way. And you have sensors about this big that you can put here, and your iPhone or Android will pick up all the digital information from your heart and your brain, send it instantly to a supercomputer at Scripps, and give you instant feedback. And that has never been possible before. So we looked at all of that, and I will quickly go over these slides. And what did we find? That instantly, within seconds of experiencing meditation, your brain waves change in a direction of actually getting in touch with the deeper part of yourself. Spiritual traditions call that the soul. And there are instant changes in your blood pressure and heart activity that can be seen within seconds, and all in a beneficial direction. So this is somebody getting that heart sensor put on their skin. It's about the size of a Band-Aid. And so we started to look at effects on cellular aging, the brain, the nervous system, gene expression, and in an attempt to solve the hard problem, does consciousness, does your mind, does your spirit create all your experience? And I won't go into the details of the study, other than, we had several kinds of meditation experiences, but we also had, we were looking at emotions, we were looking at controls, so there were people who were not being studied, we were looking at identity, and we were looking first at this enzyme called telomerase. So this is a picture of your chromosomes, your genome. This is what happened when your father went for a picnic with your mother and came back, okay? And after that, the rest happened by itself, thanks to the mysterious universe. And at the end of this gene is something called a telomere. Okay, it's the extension of your genome, and this is controlled by an enzyme called telomerase, for which Elizabeth got the Nobel Prize. And so what did we find? In 4 days of the experience, telomerase went up by 40%. This was shocking. Nobody had shown that, and so we made sure that this was actually true. We repeated the studies. We took the blood samples, and we sent them everywhere else to the other institutions that I mentioned. This is a slide from Mount Sinai Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And what did they show? That all the genes that increase well-being went up. Okay, regulation of biological quality, body fluids, wound healing, platelet activation, heart rate regulation, and all the genes that increase susceptibility to disease, including heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and inflammation went down. So you're not your genes. Your genes are actually on-off switches, and your consciousness controls them. This is a new science. It's called epigenetics. Because when President Clinton announced the Genome Project had been completed in the year 2002, we thought we had the alphabet of life, and now we would be able to control every disease just because we knew the genetic markers of disease, but it turns out that was not true. Okay, you're not your genes. If you were, then a potato should be smarter than you because a potato has more genes than you have. Seriously. 65% of your genes are the same as a banana. 84% of your genes are the same as a mouse. 98.6% of your genes are the same as a chimpanzee. That's not the genes, but it's how those genes are being regulated, how those genes are being switched on and off. And we are doing it, you are doing it. Anyway, this is what we found. Genes that regulate heart health in a positive direction were enriched 17 times over baseline. And it was really amazing. All these very well thought out studies done in 7 institutions. And now actually we're taking this to a new level. And these are very detailed slides. I don't think we have time to go over these, but basically what they show is that genes don't act by themselves. They network with each other to keep you healthy and alive. Okay, there's no single gene that works by itself. They network, and then the network of genes regulate other networks of genes with only one purpose, to keep you healthy and alive. And this is affected not just through your mind and the sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts that you have, but by your environment, by your social interactions, by your personal relationships, by how you interpret your life, how do you interpret the daily experience of living. They all, in fact, regulate the genes and the networks of genes, and therefore, basically the idea is that there's no such thing as an environment. You are the environment. You are the localization of the total environment, starting with the total universe. The total universe localizes as you right now. The electrochemical forces in your body, the electromagnetic fields of the universe, which are interact with the electromagnetic fields produced by your body. So you synchronize with them, the subatomic forces, gravity, space-time, but then your immediate environment, the room you're in, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, the food that you eat, and how you interact through the 5 senses, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. So this leads us really to the very fundamental idea that we should probably not use the word environment. It's our body. You have a personal body, and you have an extended body, and a universal body. So your personal body is this. Your extended body right now is everyone in this room and all of us. And that's why love and compassion and joy and equanimity and relationship actually regulates our biology. So you have a personal body, you have an extended body, and you have a universal body, and they're all equally yours. One is no more yours than the other. The trees have to breathe so you can breathe. They are your lungs. The earth recycles as your physical body. The rivers and waters of our planets are our circulation. And the sun is the source of all our energy, which we ultimately translate into this, and the light that we're experiencing here. So when we make that shift inside us, then we realize that it's all happening in consciousness, and it's all happening in that domain of universal consciousness, which spiritual traditions, for lack of a better word, call God, or the great mystery, or the great void, or the great mind, or the cosmic consciousness, and that now we have the basis for creating a new science that looks at how everything influences our biology, particularly our immediate environment with which we are more in contact with. So we are now doing this new study on radical well-being, and it's called self-directed biological transformation, where we are looking at the effects of everything from massage to breathing to diet, through air, food, water, light, were many of the things that Paul is putting into his well-being standard, which take what LEAD is doing and actually expand the knowledge that has come through LEAD with the well-building standard, so that we can actually create an environment that feels like our body, like our extended body. And then we are adding to that, simple practices like yoga and breathing techniques and sensory modulation and good nutrition. In fact, this will be our study. How do we influence, this is our upcoming study, what's happening in our mind, intellect, and ego? How do we experience energy and information which is coming to us from the environment? And how does that influence our physical body? And how does that extend into our personal relationships, social interactions, and what we call reality? We started the lecture by asking, what is reality? And this is a beautiful phrase from one of the Upanishads, the ancient wisdom tradition of India, which says, I am the field and the knower of the field. The entire universe localizes as my physical body. And as we are looking at this research, we are seeing very interesting shifts in both spiritual identity, emotional identity, moving in the direction of love, compassion, joy, peace. And we are seeing immediate changes in cardiovascular health, a 40% increase in the enzyme telomerase in 4 days, indicating a positive shift in cell aging, change in gene expression and gene expression networks regulating each other in the direction of homeostasis or self-healing or self-regulation. So our conclusion is that you are a conscious being, and that consciousness is where you begin. And that creates sentience, self-knowing, self-organizing, self-regulating, with feedback loops that is constantly evolving through creativity, a new paradigm. And in this, we identified the 5 pillars that are most important: sleep, meditation, movement, emotions, and nutrition. Here's the new science, a new paradigm, which I think this is leading into epigenetics. You're not your genes, but how they go on and off. You can change the networks of your brain, and we'll do that before we conclude today, promise. You can influence the biological markers of aging, and you can begin to look at the body more as energy and information. And so this is what happens in a 24-hour period every day, okay, to you and to me and to every living organism, particularly humans. So we have thoughts, emotions, memories, desires. We sleep, we eat, we eliminate, we move, we breathe. We have sexual expression, sometimes not every 24 hours. We interact with nature. We take in food and we digest it, metabolize it. And this is how we experience our environment through the 5 senses, which is actually the essence of what we're doing with the well-building standard and every aspect to feed the body with holistic information. And of course, we have personal relationships and social interactions. Here are some of the conclusions based on our research, and that is that your body is a process, it's not a structure. So everything that happens to you as experience, actually you can use to reinvent your body, because your body is not a fixed thing. It's not a noun, it's a verb. And when it's an activity, we can influence it through the energy and information, and that we can influence our gene expression through our thoughts, emotions, relationships, social interactions, and environment, and that we can actually optimize the rewiring of our brain for physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And this is something that is also new information, comes from my colleague Rudy Tanzi, who is the head of genetics at Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And he says now everybody agrees that only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. So even in cancer, only 5% of the genes that are responsible for cancer, and they are fully penetrant, and they're rare. Most of it is through the environment. So 95% of our disease-related genes are influenced by the environment. You can change your relationship with time, which means if you're centered in the present moment, then you don't experience time as the way most of our society does. Most of our society is constantly running out of time. People say, I'm running out of time. If you actually look at the person who's running out of time, quote unquote, their heart rate will be faster, their platelets will be sticky, their blood pressure will be higher, they'll have a lot of inflammation in their body, and when they suddenly drop dead of a heart attack, they'll have run out of time. So it's not, you have the most time when you're present. You have the most time when you're present, when your awareness is centered in the moment, which means the most important people in your life are the one in front of you now. The most important activity in your life is what you're doing right now. Okay. If you have that attitude, you'll have all the time to get everything done. And the key to all this is transformation in awareness is how you reinvent your body by reinventing your environment. Now, we've taken this to a new level with some research we've done in collaboration with Gallup, where I'm a senior scientist, and we look at career well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, and community well-being all put together. Because this is also our environment, right? So if you're not happy in your work, and if people in your work environment don't encourage you or recognize your strengths, you sooner or later start to get sick. So here's the data here. If your boss ignores you, your rate of disengagement goes up to 40-something%. If your boss doesn't ignore you but criticizes you, you get better. You say, how come? And that is because you'd rather be criticized than ignored. Now you exist. Okay? But if your boss recognizes a single strength that you have, you go down to less than 1% disengagement. It's estimated that between actively disengaged workers and disengaged workers, we lose about $300 billion a year in economy in the United States. So what's the difference between actively disengaged and disengaged? Well, the actively disengaged are not only unhappy, but they come to work specifically to make other people unhappy. How do we do that? So we do that, change this now. How do we improve this situation? We change this, first of all, by creating a beautiful environment that is pleasing to the senses, that is healthy to your body, and that maximizes the use of your energy, and that, in fact, nurtures your body. But then we also have to make sure that we work with people that we enjoy working with, that have a common vision, that are emotionally bonded, and that who complement each other's strengths. That would be like an effective sports team, literally. Imagine, because that's what sports teams are. They have a common vision, they bond emotionally, and they maximize each other's strengths. We looked at social well-being, and here's some very interesting data. If you have a happy friend, your happiness goes up by 15%. But if your happy friend has a happy friend whom you don't know, it goes up another 10%. And if your happy friend's happy friend has a happy friend that you don't know, it keeps going up. So we predict that the best way to get rid of your enemies is to make them happy. And this has huge implications now that we have social networks, that we can actually send somebody an emoticon and give them a dopamine hit if we want. Right? Dopamine, serotonin, opiates, oxytocin, they're all contained in those little emoticons. Physical well-being I've already talked to you about. You know, the environment is very much a part of it, but sleep, and that's why sleeping, lighting that actually helps you go to sleep, and sleep increases creativity, improves your emotions, and facilitates healing. Most people who take sleeping pills don't get sleep. You should know that, obviously. That it's artificial, it's not real. 70% of the US population at some time or another uses sleeping pills. I remember when I was an intern, one day, I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, and I saw the nurse waking up a patient, and she was saying, "Mr. Smith, would you please wake up? I have to give you your sleeping pill." So, you know, I stopped her. I said, "You're waking this person to give him a sleeping pill?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Why are you doing that?" And she said, "Because I know he's going to wake up in 2 hours, then he'll wake me up, and then I'll wake you up." I said, "Go ahead, give the sleeping pill." And that's our training. That's our training. We now realize that in hospitals, 80 to 90% of prescriptions are for 5 things: pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, and constipation. If you want to remember that, the acronym is PANIC. Pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, and constipation. That's 90% of prescriptions, which you can change by creating the right environment in a hospital. Because right now, hospitals are more dangerous than prisons. Okay? Because what do you see in a hospital? You see bad quality air, you see foul food, and you see intense anxiety-generating sounds. Beepers are going on and off, alarms are going on, codes are going on. Everything is threatening, and you're supposed to get better. So the next frontier for both LEED and well building standard has to be hospitals. You would facilitate healing, and this would improve the situation for which most people are giving drugs that do not work, that actually exacerbate the problem. We also looked at financial well-being, and it was very clear that actually these were the determinants. Career, social, physical well-being are actually directly related to financial well-being. But of course, financial well-being also means security and insurance and paying your taxes, much though you dislike to do that, so you can sleep soundly. But financial well-being is a very important factor, and as is community well-being, and creating environments where people can get together to share their vision, to serve as volunteers and share spiritual practice, and basically serve the larger community. Now, I'm not going to have time to go into all this, but there's easy ways to assess this, and this is what we do for individuals, for businesses, for corporations, and we can ask very simple questions sometimes to get a pretty good idea. So do you like what you do every day? Do you learn or do something interesting every day? You can scale you can score yourself from 1 to 10. If you score more than 8, you're thriving. If you score between 4 and 7, you're struggling. And if you score less than 4, you're suffering, and there's a crisis. And so we can do this in every category: social, career, financial, physical, and community. And based on this, we can actually predict what is the future for an individual, for a business, for a corporation, for a community, for a city, for a country, and for the world. So this is basically done through various subjective assessments that measure how you experience life every day and how the things that are important to you, actually influence your biology. As I said, this is a lot of data, but here is something you might want to see. So by geographic area in the world, this is how people are doing. And what I wanted to show you, basically, these are the 5 areas that we're studying right now: purpose, social, financial, community, physical, and in this, how do you create the environment for this? And this is what's happening in the United States. So you can see that only 16% are thriving in this area, and only, say, between 16 to 23% of people in our country are thriving. The rest are struggling or suffering. Not good news. And you cannot solve this just with money. You have to solve this when we care for each other and we understand that by changing the quality of the experience of our life on a daily basis, we can improve our well-being. I'm not going to cover this. I have lots of other material, but right now I'm not going to go into spiritual well-being, other than the fact that, maybe I should say a few words. People, you can have everything you want, but ultimately, we are all going to get old and we are going to die. Okay, so when you confront that with sobriety, then at some point we start to experience suffering too. And the key here is not to have a crisis get you there, but to be prepared for knowing your true identity now. So the spiritual traditions say that suffering happens when we do not know the true nature of reality, when we cling to the impermanent, which is a fact of life, when you're afraid of the impermanent, when you identify with the false habitual self, your ego, and when you fear death. And that all of these are contained by not knowing your true self or true reality. So this is actually what we do in that 1 week of experience where we studied both biological markers of aging, cell biology, and genome, as a result of spiritual practice. And basically, it's fundamentally the yoga of being, which is meditation and self-reflection and self-awareness, the yoga of feeling, which is emotional well-being, the yoga of thinking, which is self-reflection, and the yoga of doing, which is actions that help the world, actions that improve what we call the environment, which localizes as our body. So in the last 12 minutes or so, having given you this information, let me, okay, I should tell you a little bit about this. This is what social scientists call the happiness formula. So, you know, scientists like to put everything in an equation. So H stands for happiness, S stands for set point in the brain, C stands for conditions of living, and V stands for the choices we make every day, voluntary choices. The set point in the brain is how do you view the world? How do you view life? Is life fun for you, or is life a problem? Is everything a problem, or is everything an opportunity? Conditions of living means the environment. And V, voluntary choices. Are the choices merely for personal pleasure, or are the choices for fulfillment? Are the choices for creating that environment where we nurture each other? And so, you know, this is pretty much now well-known formula, the happiness formula, that gives us at least ability to look at this. Okay, what I'm going to do is, for now, I'm just going to take you through a couple of processes in the next 12 minutes, 11 minutes. We might go 5 minutes over time. So I'm going to take you through transcendence, self-awareness, self-reflection, maybe a little bit of this, not this today. Okay? So why don't we sit, and by the way, also just to complete the story, this is all measurable now. There are measurable devices that soon will be in your clothing. I'm wearing some of them. I'm sure you're wearing some of them that can measure sleep, exercise, movement, but soon many more things. In fact, this particular device that Apple is coming out with, it's not out yet, will be a phone, but will also measure every biological marker that I've been talking to you about digitally. So you'll be wearing it on your wrist, and you'll be able, you know, if it rings, you can say hello. But otherwise, you can also check your heart rate and how you slept last night as well. And that is good feedback because it helps us to create the right environment for our well-being. Okay, so sit comfortably, uncross your legs, and put your hands in your lap. You want to keep them open, that's fine, but otherwise, just fold them. And let's all close our eyes. And for the next minute or so, just observe your breath as it moves in through your nostrils, and then observe it when it comes out of your nostrils. Just remembering that our breath is always the door to the present moment. Unlike our thoughts, which are either in the past or the present, our breath is always, unlike our thoughts, which are about the past or the future, our breath is always in this moment. It's the flow of spirit. It's the flow of life. So be one with your breath. Let your mind settle into your breath. And now, keeping your awareness in your heart, let's evoke the feeling of love just by thinking of someone that we love. That's all you have to do. Bring into your awareness someone you love. And now evoke in your awareness the experience or the feeling of joy. Remember a joyful moment, or think of a joyful child, or get in touch with your own joyful child. But experience joy. Now, keeping your awareness in your heart, mentally ask the question, who am I? Don't look for answers. Allow any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts to come to you. Who am I? And now the question, what do I want? What do I want for me and those that I love? Allowing any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts to come to you. And now ask the question, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Allowing any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts to come to you. And finally ask the question, what am I grateful for? Allowing any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts to come to you. Gratitude opens the door to the abundance of the universe and abundance in your life. And reverence for existence. What am I grateful for? Okay, now I'm going to take you to another place. So just start repeating your full name to yourself. I am Paul Chiala. I am Mary Smith. I am John Doe. Just repeat it mentally. Now please drop your last name, so just repeat your first name. I am Deepak, I am Paul, I am Mary, I am John. And now please drop your first name. Just say, I am, I am, I am, I am. Now let that go. Just say, aham, aham, aham. Just the sound of your vibration of your being, aham. And finally drop that too, and rest in stillness. Rest in being. Rest in existence. This is ground zero. This is your spirit. Now from this stillness, bring your awareness into your heart again with the intention of feeling your heartbeat. So just feel your heartbeat. You should be able to feel it, some sound, some sensation. Now bring your awareness into your fingertips and feel your heartbeat in your fingertips. Have that intention. Open your hands. Feel your heartbeat in your fingertips. You should be able to feel it. Some throbbing, some sensation. And finally, bring your awareness to your whole body with the understanding that the pulse of life is in all the cells of your body, not just your heart and your fingertips. Your whole body is a field of awareness pulsing with life. And in that pulsing awareness, which is your body, let's put 4 intentions. So just put that thought there, feeling your body as I pronounce the 4 intentions. Intention 1, joyful, energetic body. Joyful, energetic body. Loving, compassionate heart. loving, compassionate heart. Reflective, alert mind. Reflective, alert mind. Lightness of being, lightness of soul. And now just relax into your body if you want to stretch a little bit, and then take a minute and open your eyes. Okay, so that was about 12 minutes of getting in touch with our own self. Awareness of our body, of our breath, and reflection. And then a deeper identity. You start with your name, the name you were called when you were a child, and then our common identity, I am. And then the vibration from where the I am comes from. And then ground of being. So, and then seeding the intentions. So as I said, we're now in a very interesting time where we can quantify all of that. So it's possible to quantify and even improve on that. It's possible to introduce the right vibrations for sleep state and dream state. And it's possible, ultimately, to link our well-being. This is happening. Social unrest, crime rate, hospital admissions, accidents, the quality of leadership are linked to our well-being. The best thing we can do for our world is to improve our own well-being and share it with others. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.